Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. If you could just either chat, send me what your name is when you are logging in, or change your display name, or turn on your video for a moment just so I can make sure I kind of know who is on. I will. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Oh, that's going to be trippy. I got to mute. If you could. But we are currently live on YouTube. And our information will begin really at 5:30.
You're coming across great, Christina.
Wonderful. Fingers crossed all the technology works.
Wait, can you see me?
And hey, there's a waiting room today, so that should help. And this was not a published link. That's why everyone can view via YouTube. That helps protect us a little bit.
I don't know how long I'm going to keep that hamburger for.
I appreciate it. It's all good. Hi, President Harrington. Good to see you're able to join it. If you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and go on mute for now, and then we will get started at 5:30.
Okay, I will. Just FYI, I will not be at next Tuesday's meeting.
Okay.
My wife tested today positive for COVID, so that's in quarantine. Everybody's doing okay, but we're obviously following the safety protocols as the health department desires. And so FYI on that. I'll check with Grant prior to, and hopefully we can, hopefully he can be there as pro tem. And if not, we'll go to plan C.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for letting me know. I hope she recovers quickly and you guys don't have any issues.
Yeah.
Glad we're virtual for budget hearings. That makes it a little easier for you.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and be on mute here.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Hello, Christina.
Hey, Randy. Good to see you.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know I'm here. Okay.
Gotcha. I might change your name so I don't forget.
Okay, sounds good.
If whoever is the DL 1016 could let me know who they are, I will change your name.
That might be me, Tom Schindeldecker.
Wonderful, Councilman Schindeldecker. I will change your name. Thanks for joining.
Good luck with spelling it.
I think I can figure it out. Don't hold it against me if I mess it up, though.
You wouldn't be the first.
I believe I saw Tom Demuth. Tom, are you logged in as Thomas?
That's correct.
Wonderful. Good to see you. Good evening. I have someone by the name of Charles iPhone. Can you confirm who that is?
That's Bud.
Hey, Bud. Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and mute you for now, as well as change your name.
Okay, if you would just leave me muted because I'm at work. So
Sounds
Okay.
good.
in case somebody walks in or something.
Wonderful. Will do.
Okay, thank
Mayor,
you.
John, this is John again. Jim Niemeyer called me last night, said that he was called into mandatory work this evening and will not be at tonight's meeting. Did you get that?
Yes. Thank you for letting us know.
Thank you.
John,
Yes,
do you have me in there?
who is me?
This would be that handsome and debonair Mr. Slough.
Oh, yes, thank you, Jim. Yes. Please mute your Zoom during the meeting, and then you can raise your hand if you have any questions.
Okay, I don't see me in the,
I think you're good. I can hear you.
Are you looking at the participant list? I just changed your name to Councilman Slough, so you should see yourself now.
Mayor,
Yes.
this is Alicia. I am the second mayor listed there because I logged in as you the other day for the test. So if you want to change that second mayor to me.
well, I don't see me, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I just wanted to let you know that I don't see any that I'm on the screen, but as long as you can get my voice, that's good. Dennis.
And can you all see my screen?
I cannot.
2021 budget hearings. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I can't see anybody's screen, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But you're dealing with a rookie when it comes to this kind of thing. So please have patience.
We certainly will.
Bless you.
As long as you can hear the discussion and let us know if you have questions, that's the big thing. Hopefully you have
Okay.
your budget book.
I've got it.
Perfect. You will be all set.
Could I have that on tape that I was perfect? I don't hear that too often. Bless you.
This is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube, so it is now part of the public record.
All right. I'm sitting up extra straight as we speak. Thank you.
Well, good evening. Hopefully everyone can see me all right for those of you that are joining by video, and thank you for those who may be tuning in to watch online. This is certainly a little unique for all of us, so thank you for your patience as we figure out technology to have the 2021 budget hearings for the City of Findlay with City Findlay Council. It is 5:30, so we will go ahead and get started. Appreciate everyone taking the time. As we go through the documentation this evening, we will try to share on our screen the budget summary sheets that have also been provided in your budget book. They look similar to this. There'll be PDFs on your screen. I would encourage you at this point, I'm showing all of the folks that are on video on our screen. As we go through it, I will change it so it just shows the presenter so that those who may be watching online can see just the individual that's speaking at that point, as well as then we will be sharing those budget summary sheets on the screen. If at any point you have an issue, please don't hesitate to send me a chat message and we'll try to work through that. Or you can unmute yourself. At this point, I have muted everyone just so that we don't get background noise or have any issues from that standpoint. But if you are having any issues, I should be able to also see your videos throughout. So feel free to flag me down and we'll try to help you out. So we are going to go ahead and start this evening with just a general overview. The budget that you have before you at this point is a bit of a deficit budget. That's similar to what we've presented the last number of years, but it is also with anticipation that our departments will continue to manage their budgets. I'm gonna make sure I'm trying to manage the streaming as well. So hopefully, let's try to get this. Okay. This is not anything super new on how we are presenting this. There are a couple of points that I do want to hit on. And I think that first of all, obviously 2020 has been a very interesting year for everyone. We would be remiss if we didn't consider COVID and the impact it's had on our community so far this year. And certainly as we look at our revenue projections for next year, we expect it will continue to impact our community. some positive news with the vaccine summit and the vaccines that we're expecting to be available in the coming weeks. Certainly those don't come without their own issues, so we'll see what happens there. But was at the White House yesterday and had a wonderful presentation from a number of officials throughout the country that have been leading the Operation Warp Speed. And it's very promising to see that they are really expecting, if the FDA approves the vaccines that are from Pfizer and Moderna at this point, that we could have about 20 million Americans vaccinated by the end of this year, an additional 30 million vaccinated in January and 50 million in February. Again, I want to just state, as information continues to come out about those, not expecting any mandates. Those would be available to those who want them. And the city of Findlay and Hancock County would be working to follow the Ohio vaccination plan, which would start with those that are most vulnerable and our healthcare workers, and those working with the most vulnerable populations, for example, in long-term care facilities, and then continuing to work through first responders, elderly individuals, and then working the way through our community to try to get our community back open as much as possible, our economy rebounding a bit, and really just kind of working through that. A couple of other items I wanted to mention. Obviously, I've been sending the unemployment reports that we've been receiving from Job and Family Services over the last couple of months. Our unemployment has decreased significantly, which is great. Overall, our employment is looking strong, and I continue to expect that to rebound. I think we're still seeing quite a bit of unemployment within those service sector jobs because of the restrictions on eating out and hotels and travel and all of that. But we'll continue to work with those businesses to rebound. And then I just wanted to remind folks, as we're talking about the economy, Hancock County is a little bit unique. Even though we have a population of about 75,000 individuals, we have an additional about 20,000 individuals that come into our community on a regular basis to work. So that looks a little bit different right now, and we're certainly seeing that impacting our downtown businesses. Overall, as we go into 2021, we are accounting for continued economic impact, but recognize that I think things are on the upswing and are prepared to make changes as we need to accommodate that. So I'm excited for our departments to be able to present their budgets. I'm going to hand it over to Paul to kind of give some additional overview. We're going to do it a little bit differently. Some of the wrap-up information that we typically provide at the end, we're going to give to you on the front side, because we hope that will frame up the conversation. So Paul, I don't know if you even have video capabilities. Let me see. I have like four different screens, so it's very strange for me at the moment.
Good evening, everyone.
Going to go ahead and pin you, so hopefully you will be the primary video on display.
Do I need to share my screen?
Yes, if you would like to, you should be able to request that, and I can give you the
All right. Thanks, Mayor. Again, a lot of this information we usually go over at the end of the budget meetings. These are the administrative planning sheets that we go over with our department heads to sort of frame the conversation, wrapping up budgets, and then also as we continued through 2020 to evaluate where we were, not necessarily on a nonstop basis, but it certainly felt like that. And while we get the budget book and the numbers that the auditor provides to sort of start the framework for the conversation, what we also do is talk to our department heads extensively about how revenue impacts our picture, why we need to monitor it, and what we can do with the budget carry forward. So I thought it would be good to start with this real simple reconciliation sheet that we've used. And what it shows you is our projected end of cash at the end of 2019 at the top there. I'm assuming you can all see my mouse as well. We did have a lot of influx in cash, and that was from the Corona relief funds that we were able to put in the general fund, and also some dollars from workers' comp. So those numbers are reflected in our overall revenue. Comparing that to our expenses, of course, we've created a surplus situation for this year. Now, the projected ending cash at the end of 2020 because of those is somewhere around $15.5 million. That's accounting for what is reported now in terms of budget carry forward. We take a look at our projected revenues and expenses and come up with a cash balance for the end of 2021. Now, I do not have included in this number the $1.6 million that the auditor has included for the severance payout reserve transfer. Not sure that that will occur in 2020. And I think the budget book alludes to a 21 transfer, but I think we need to have a larger conversation about that anyway before we jump to any actual subtractions of what about our cash balance might be at the end of 21. So I don't have any numbers included for that at this point. That gives us a $10.5 million cash carry forward balance. There's also a range with which we're going to see some numbers come in regarding actual income tax. The income tax department has projected about $1.6 million in additional revenue over and above what the auditor has projected. So I think we're going to live somewhere in between those two numbers. If we take Andrew's estimate for income tax, post admin expenses and capital and all that, we have a $12.1 million cash carry forward. Add a 5% budget carry forward from the departments, and our cash carry forward is somewhere around $13.6 million. Now, the reality is, and I'll tie these two numbers together when I show you our planning spreadsheets that we use with our department heads. But the reality is we're probably going to live somewhere in between these two numbers. We're always evaluating our position. I think the mayor alluded to it pretty well and has done so, you know, in many of the council meetings, and you've seen it in the information that we've been providing to you. The department heads have really done a good job. So I feel pretty strongly that we're going to be able to create this 5% carry forward, but still give them the flexibility to do their job. Now, one of the things that we talked about was, what if we wouldn't have got this money from Bureau of Workers' Comp and or Corona Relief? Where would we be actually positioned? And I think the answer is somewhere around $13 million in cash, as opposed to the $15.6 million in cash. So we would still be in a really strong position. Get to 21. Any questions about that so far? I know I'm trying to go through this, you know, with everyone's mics muted, but I'll pause there if there's any questions. If not, what can we conclude from this summary? I think we can conclude a couple things. One is we did a good job managing the expense budget for 2020. I have full expectation I will be able to do the same in 2021. It's also clear that the CRF and Bureau of Workers' Comp's funds were a very welcome boost when you take a look at the difference in terms of millions of dollars to our position going into next year. And I think it's also pretty clear that we're going to end next year somewhere in between $10 and $13 million in cash carry forward. As we go ahead and take a look at, I'm going to try to hide this. There we go. Is this big enough text for everyone to see? I can kind of make it a little bit bigger. Mayor, how's it look to you?
I can see it pretty well.
So what we're looking at in this particular sheet is our projections for the next few years with regard to income tax, general fund revenue. You can see we have a projected downtick this year of 9%. A projected decline again next year of another 10%. These are coming out of the budget book, and you'll be able to see in general what the trend has looked like. And this sort of just reiterates, and I know we go over this every year, what the revenue ups and downs can look like relative to our budget. We're up 8% one year, up 8% another, down 7%. This year, we're combined with the numbers play out. We're going to be down.
I'm in a meeting.
19. Getting a little feedback from somebody. If
Paul,
our tax,
hey, Paul, I'm sorry. This is Jeff Wobser. That wasn't my feedback, by the way, but
okay.
I'm still looking at the same spreadsheet we started at.
Really?
Yes, sir. I'm on your summary page.
You're on the reconciliation page.
Yes, sir. The one that your cursor is currently on.
Okay. And if I drop that down, what do you see now?
Administrative summary and department level planning. Is that where you wanted to be?
You should be looking at a spreadsheet that's showing our income tax revenues projected for 2021 and 22.
Paul, you might just want to click unshare or stop share and then choose a new window. Sometimes you choose an individual Excel window compared to a screen.
Okay.
And I think I've got everybody muted other than Councilman Wobser and Paul at this point. I had a
How's
couple.
that look? I did a new share with that spreadsheet.
There you go. I think that's what you wanted, Paul. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jeffrey. Appreciate that. So I'll start over. On this sheet, what we're looking at is our projected income tax revenues going to the general fund. You can see here that in 2020, we experienced a decline of approximately 9%. We're projected to experience a decline of approximately 10%, depending on, again, how those numbers play out. If we end up at 21.6, we're essentially going to be living in revenues that we were experiencing about 7 years ago. So as you can see, the ups and downs that have occurred with revenue, we're right back down to where we were in 2014. There's no way we can manage that without these cash reserves that we put together and proper management within the budget. Annually creating that carry forward, you've all seen the benefit of that. And we stress to our department heads when we're living through times like this, it's exactly why we've kept our staffing levels safe so that we know when we hire people, we can keep them, and we've kept our operational balances relative to those people. Now, it's also important to take a look at what we're doing with capital. I'm assuming you can see this sheet now. Hopefully, I don't have to do this every time I change tabs.
We can see capital allocation analysis.
Okay, great. So here we are in 2020. We appropriated 20%. And did an additional 378,000. Our effective net contribution to capital out of CIT was 22%. We're projecting the same for 21 and 22. I think that formula is working pretty well for us. This is a graphical representation of what you can see. We've held that 20% with the difference between the revenue that's going to the general fund and the general revenues, and then also what we're contributing to capital. As we take a look at our overall budget, here we have the total general fund budget. Here we have our personnel costs coming out of that overall budget, and here we have our operational costs. You can see that over the past 8 years or so, our personnel cost growth has been pretty flat. Over the past few years, we've added a few staff to the departments. We've grown operational expenses accordingly. But if you take a look at what happened this year, we had to squeeze our 2020 expenses. Our staff level stayed the same. Our operational expenses going into the operation for this year and next year were impacted. You'll see that reflected in the budget numbers. I'm sure you have. You'll see where the department heads have made cuts, some in operational expenses that are equipment related, a lot in training, a lot in temporary staff, but that's where all those cuts show up. If we take a look at historically where we end up with actual expenses relative to the budget, you can see here in 2020 what those operational impacts did. We significantly declined with regard to our budget plan so that we could, in worst case scenario, have that cash available. Again, the Corona funds and the workers' comp fund added to this benefit in terms of cash, but this is where the real planning took place. And you can see that at least going back to 2012, we've set a budget, we've examined that budget, and we've lived within that budget throughout the year to create a cash carry forward. A budget carry forward, I should say, to add to the cash carry forward. This is where all those numbers sort of play out. This is a combination of all the charts, but what I really wanted to show you is where we're tying back to the original spreadsheet here. So you can see we have our general revenue, we have our total general fund budget, we have the actual general fund revenue, and then we have our cash. These 3 points represent the original spreadsheet that I showed you. I won't jump back and forth to it because of the screen sharing, but we talked about the ranges in revenue. This is the range if we did not take out the 1.6 million in severance. This is the range if we got a little bit more money out of income tax. This is the range data point that the auditors provided in the budget book, and this is our minimum reserve. We're living life somewhere in here, and I would expect that as the years go forward, and we can play with that. If you guys want to set up a planning session and everyone can pull out their crystal ball, we have the ability to plug in to the spreadsheet and take a look at what everyone feels comfortable from a forecast perspective is, and we can tie it right back to this spreadsheet. And what we would do is alter the trend for cash. We alter the trend for cash. We will be altering expense line items relative to the overall budget. So I just wanted to give you a real quick overview, and I know that's really fast, but the long and short of it is that we feel pretty comfortable living in this range right here. We feel comfortable with the 2021 budget and the 2022 budget as presented, and we're prepared to see what those years come and what they bring in terms of revenue. With that, I'll turn it over to the mayor, or we can turn it over to E to get started with the budget sheets.
Perfect. I know that was a lot of information, Paul. Thank you for presenting that. I think it's good to kind of just frame up the conversation. Certainly no one really knows what the future holds, but we have done wonderful work over the last number of years preparing our coffers to be able to handle these challenging times. We'll continue to manage our budget prudently. What you have before you is what we believe to be very appropriate. When we talked to the departments, we said, try to keep your budget for this year in line with what our target was this past year. So not the budget that was approved, but kind of that target amount. And so that's what you have before you. Does anybody have, I know we're going to have a lot of discussion. Does anybody have any immediate questions on the information that Paul just presented? I believe Councilman Wobser, I saw you raise your hand. Go ahead.
I do, Mayor. Thank you. And first off, thank you very much, Paul and Mayor, for all the work that you guys do, putting in time and effort on the budget. Makes these conversations much easier. The question I've got here is, it looks like our 2021 general expense budget is going to be very similar to what we originally proposed in 2020. And we are consistently, looking back at Paul's graph, returning to general fund anywhere from $500,000 to this year, what, about $2.1 million back to the general fund versus the original budget numbers. And I guess my question then is, what is your philosophy for consistently over budgeting? We're always giving money back to the general fund. And the question I get consistently is, why don't they just budget at the numbers that they're really going to need?
I can answer that.
Okay.
My philosophy on budgeting is to, within certainly the legal limitations for adopting a budget, give the department heads a number that they are comfortable with and the dollars that will allow them to accomplish the goals that our community expects them to accomplish. After that, it is up to them and the administration and council to make decisions as the year goes on as to what the needs versus the wants are. Now, if you take a look at the budget line items for public works, for example, maybe recreation even, this is all off the top of my head, so bear with me, but a lot of those departments did without any kind of temporary staff this year. Now, that is not an ongoing practice. That is not going to meet the level of expectation in the cemetery or our parks annually that we have set forth. Now, that's just one example. But when we tighten the screws in a year like this, and we say, you guys are going to have to do only what we need to do this year, because we have no idea what our revenue picture is going to look like. We have no idea what 2021 is going to look like. We have no idea when Corona is going to end. Help us out and manage the budget. They're the best ones to do it. The people on the ground are the best ones to make those decisions. And if you take next year's budget and you cut it to what they spent this year, mathematically, you will be accomplishing what the people in the coffee shop will tell you is eliminating over budgeting. But I can tell you that the side effect to that will be long-term over budgeting or spending dollars that you don't need, because the budget will always be set to what you spend. It's called the use it or lose it mentality. And it runs rampant in some corporate environments. It certainly runs rampant in municipal environments. And when we decided to change the culture here, that was one of the big things that we hit on. And when we started to see revenue declines, we had our department head meetings and we've said we built cash, don't alter your budget. And I can distinctly remember one particular individual said, I cannot believe I'm hearing this because I've heard you say it for years. And this year, I thought this was the year that you were going to tell us something different. I thought you were going to be a liar. If we want to cut down to the quick, you'll benefit for 1 year. And that's all I can say. You can squeeze dollars here and there out of these line items, but I think if you look historically, at least since 2012, what has occurred is a very diligent respect for only spending the dollars that we need. Now, only 20% of that is operational. Okay, that's where you're talking about some of the discretion that we have. You know, right. You really want to get into the long-term planning. If you really think that we're going to see declines in terms of 9 or 10% for more than a year, then we have to have a larger discussion about what we want the pie to look like with regard to people. But still, we're asking the department heads to diligently manage 20% and create a budget carry forward that is millions of dollars, but is 5% of the total. I mean, it's pretty darn good. So I really resist the argument that we are over budgeting wholeheartedly. I just don't think it's true.
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Paul, I agree with you. And we've had this discussion just about every year, and I appreciate that. If you going back to your chart that you had, it looked like we've over budgeted. I don't want to use the word over budget. We had extra dollars returned to the general fund every year except one, I think, was where the two lines actually met. And I'm going to guess that if going back on an average to look at those two lines, it's going to be that 5% number that you've used a couple times.
Sometimes larger. If you take a look at historically where we've been able to add to cash, though, some of those things are not even in our department head's control. Some of this back here was all healthcare. I mean, there was a point where council had to add $700,000 to the healthcare budget because it was broke. We changed the culture with regard to healthcare. We've instituted, the high deductible healthcare plans. We made people responsible for what they were spending. And we created really huge returns in terms of healthcare savings in here. So that's not the department head's fault. And that's nothing that they even have an impact on. Fortunately, we didn't have to spend it. But, there were times when we had there was 1 year, I think we had 4 premium holidays in healthcare. That's really good news, but, that's not over budgeting.
No, I don't disagree with you, Paul. I appreciate hearing your philosophy on that. It's something that is it's been very consistent, and So people ask that question. I agree with your point of view. I think we've done a good job with it. We've given back an awful lot this year, the 2.1 million that came back. And if you feel like that we're really operating at bare bones without getting into head count, which I think was pretty much the case, correct?
That's what I believe. Yes, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, there was a number of, hires that we didn't make or seasonal employees, but that was certainly always our goal, to not have to make any significant personnel changes. And that continues to be our focus.
Absolutely. And I agree with that philosophy also. We don't need to at this point.
Right.
But at some point we may need to, but hopefully this won't continue that long. So, but no, that answers my question. I appreciate your comments, Paul.
Sure.
Yeah, Paul, thanks for highlighting that and going through this. And I think this is exactly the conversation we want to have. And certainly I think it's good to have it here at the beginning. If there's anybody watching, hopefully catch it at the beginning instead of, waiting for 3 hours. So hopefully it doesn't take that long. But I do see Councilman Russell has a question. And if anybody else wants to raise their hand, please do so. Want to be mindful of keeping us semi on timeline. But Councilman Russell, do you have a question or comment?
More of a comment versus a question, but just to reiterate what Paul was saying, that to break this use it or lose it mentality in budgeting, during a previous work situation, I was with the municipal government, and December was always ill-advised spending month, because we would look at how much money we had to spend and we would make sure we would spend it all, because gosh forbid we wouldn't hit our budget in fear of having it cut the next year. The fact that we've broken that cycle over the past 2 administrations with the city of Findlay, I think is one of the biggest accomplishments, and it doesn't make any headlines. It's very hard to describe, but what you see is that I think the benefits are in this return of funding, that we're not making ill-advised purchases, that we're focused on the mission of the city in January as well as December and all months in between. And so I'm glad that we continue with that focus. And then the other part of this budget that I like to see is that we're maintaining staffing levels. In a previous budget downturn, we cut drastically in our safety service forces, and what we ended up doing was we had a bunch of new. I believe it was firefighters specifically. We trained them well, and then we sent them packing, and we sent their training investment with them. And so the fact that we're gonna maintain that, I don't want to say promise, but that agreement that with our workforce and maintain that. True, we might not hire the next person, but for the folks that are here, they can count on continued employment. And once again, from personal experience, I know a new person who recently joined the city of Findlay in the service in the safety service forces, and they were just, as soon as the COVID thing hit, they were sure that they were going to get laid off because of budget constraints. And I reiterated to the person, no, that's not going to happen. That's not the case, because the focus of council is on maintaining workforces, and the focus on the administration is. And I think the result of the budget process that we have goes towards a stable workforce. It helps you with attraction of new employees, and this is all good. This is all good. What I've just seen in the last since the start of this meeting is the majority of what I need to see for budget presentation. All the other stuff is details that I grant the administration the purview to do as they see fit, but the overall numbers are what I want to see, and it's moving in the right direction. It's the right response to the time. So I'm very appreciative of what I've seen. I appreciate the efforts that's gone into this from the administration, and I fully support this continued approach to our budgeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Russell. I do not see any other hands raised. I do want to note real quick before we start getting into the different department levels that we do have 28 participants that are non-video. So I currently have them hidden. So we do have a number of folks that are joining our meeting this evening, including a number of other council members. and department heads. So at this point, next on our agenda is the Civil Service Commission. And I know we have Deidre with us as well as a number of the commission board members. So Deidre, I will hand it over to you. And Alicia, I'm not sure if we have any documentations, but feel free to take over screen share if we do.
Good evening, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is my first Zoom, so I just want to make sure.
Doing great.
Oh, thank you. As the mayor said, my name is Deidre Ramthen. I am the clerk for the Civil Service Commission. Commission members are Chairman Tom Kemp, Vice Chairman Chuck Clapper, and Jeff Fort. I'm going to go into our presentation now. Ours is a little bit different than the other departments. The civil service budget is pretty straightforward and is based primarily upon the testing requests from the administration for entry-level classified positions and promotional testing for the police and fire departments. Also pre-employment physicals and psychological evaluations for new hire police officers, dispatchers, and firefighters per the statutes of the Ohio Revised Code. The clerk's salary, my salary, for the hours that I work also in the engineering and zoning departments is charged back to the engineering department. Our expenses are kept to a minimum, and the proposed budget for 2021 is actually less than what was budgeted for 2020.
Perfect. Thank you, Deidre. Deidre, do you want to hit real quick on why your budget is less this year than prior year, just for those especially new members of council who may not understand that correlation?
Sure, I'll be glad to. Our budget for this year is less because obviously COVID. New hires were not requested or replaced, only retirements and things like that. For example, in 2019, I administered 20 exams, which was an all-time high for the Civil Service Department. This year, I don't have the figure in front of me, but it's probably about 5 because we have cut back on our expenses, employees, and such. Therefore, that goes on down the line with other expenses for the department as well.
Thank you, Deidre, and we certainly appreciate the work that you and the team, the commission do. It's one of those kind of behind the scenes things that doesn't get a lot of credit, but we certainly appreciate you continuing to manage the process and working with HR and all of our departments to make sure they get the personnel that they need in a timely fashion. And I know that takes a lot of coordinating, so thank you for that. I do see that I believe Councilman Wobser had a question. Before I switched over to you, Councilman, was there anything from the commission members that they wanted to mention real quick?
No, I think Deidre said it.
No. No, nothing.
Thanks, Chuck and Mr. Kemp. Certainly appreciate it. Councilman Wobser?
Deidre, please remind me, and I don't want to go into this too far because I know we're running behind already. Did we used to have a relationship with Findlay City Schools? Is that correct? And
that is correct.
And we do or do not currently have that relationship?
We currently do not have that relationship.
Okay, so they're employing somebody on their end to do the same thing that you do, is that right?
I can't speak on their behalf, but that is what I would assume.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. You're welcome.
Yep, they had notified us last year that they no longer wanted to work with us, so they are either seeking that elsewhere or working through the state.
Mm-hmm. I would think so.
Mayor, you can't see my hand, but I just wanted Deidre to again get some thanks for working with the engineering department. That's something we put together years ago, and having that shared staff out there is certainly helpful.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate your professionalism.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, she gets to deal with folks sometimes when they come in or maybe not too happy. So
that is true.
Thanks, Deidre. All
You're
right.
Welcome.
Well,
thank you.
Our pleasure. We will go ahead and move next to the law director. Let's see if we have anybody. I do not see. Let me make sure. I see somebody just tried to get in, so maybe I better make sure I know who it is. We are ready for the law director's budget overview. Do we have some Denise or Dawn on the line?
Hello, everybody.
Go ahead. And who is this?
Just as an overview,
Sounded
recall
different.
that
Go ahead.
my department has the prosecutor's office, and so you'll see in the top the salaries and such forth for all the prosecutors. Approximately 40% of those fees are paid back to us from the county, as we prosecute 40% of their misdemeanor cases in the county. There's a little bit difference in our outside counsel. As some of you may know, we had a rather lengthy lawsuit that is beginning to wrap up all of last year and the end of the year before. So we've got some monies set aside for that, but in all likelihood that will not affect us much at all in 21. Everything else, not much difference in budgeting. So I guess I'll take any questions.
There any questions from council? All right, I do not believe I see anyone. We appreciate your presentation, Law Director Rasmussen. Anything else you'd like to add before we move on to the police chief?
No, thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, so at this time we are going to move into the police department. The format is that either Paul or myself will give the overview, the top half of the budget, and then we will hand it over to the department head to be able to dig into a little more of the detail, what they've accomplished in 2020 and what their goals are for 2021. On your screen right now, you should be able to see the budget summary document. And so with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Paul.
Thank you, Mayor. Just so everyone knows, when we did this trial with all the department heads, this whole thing went flawlessly. So I expect the same thing out of everyone tonight. You're looking at the first department summary sheet that we put together. These have worked really well over the last few years. So hopefully they're of benefit to you. Certainly under the police department budget discussion, we've got parking, dispatch, disaster services, and the police department. Want to commend Chief Ring and his leadership team for doing a great job in some interesting times in 2020, not just from a budget perspective, but also from how our officers and leadership managed themselves with regard to people that wanted to voice their opinion in various fashions. Certainly very professional and a lot of kudos to them for doing that. We have relatively no change in the staffing department for the police department for multiple years. The exception to that will be this year for dispatch. We are adding a dispatcher, so you'll see a little bit of an uptick in the personnel items for that. I'll let the chief go into that a little bit. You can see pretty much looking historically that the budget distribution in terms of safety expense is going to remain the same. Police is about 33, fires at 26, and all others and other expenses are around 41%. Chief Ring, if you want to go ahead and talk about some of the things you guys got done or anything that's on your mind, feel free.
Well, first, I'd like to know why the rookie department head has to go first.
That's what we do every time.
Other than that, we're doing okay. Hi, everybody. As he said, I'm Robert Ring. I'm the new police chief as of July. So it's been a challenging time, but rewarding time so far. And we're hoping to finish out the year strong and maybe get some better times coming in 2021. But as for the budget itself, In this year alone, we've had 3 officers retire. We're in the process of replacing several of them. We have 2 officers retiring in January. So going forward, as the beginning of the year starts, with who we've been able to hire and stuff, we'll be short just 1 person, getting those new hires trained in and getting them out onto the road so we can have the manpower and stuff. Obviously, COVID has been a huge thorn in all of our sides, but as for the PD side, we've been dealing with a lot of the quarantine issues with our officers coming into contact with different people and both on duty and off duty and stuff. So we've been weathering that storm. We've been able to do it though without diminishing any of our services along those lines. You call, we're still have the manpower and everything to respond. So as for some of our highlights for what we've accomplished in 2020, we are finally able to get rid of the last of our patrol sedans. We have 4 new cars purchased. They're in the process of being outfitted and put into service. Those are all the SUV platform, which is a lot more comfortable for the officers with regards to getting in and out of. It has a little bit more room in the back for the prisoners with the partitions and stuff. So we're glad to see the cars go away. It also offers a little bit of an advantage to the officer when they get the elevated view out the windows and stuff. It's helped with that kind of thing. So VHF project, we've been working on installing equipment at the 2 water towers so that we have a fully functional VHF radio system as a backup. That is, for the most part, ready to go. They're doing just a little bit of tweaking to get it fully operational, but from what I understand, it will be ready by the end of the month. That will provide the backup. Also may in the future offer us some different avenues with regards to radios citywide. So we'll have to look into that as the time comes along. Also, back in 2019, we went to the new reporting records management system with Tyler Tech. This year, we've been able to merge over into their e-citation program, which is the citation program that officers use to issue traffic citations and stuff. That is almost to the point where we're using that now. We've been using a system through the state. Switching to this will allow the information from the traffic stops and stuff to seamlessly transmit into our reporting database and everything, which will help us with gathering stats and those kind of things. And then as for our CALEA review, we get reviewed every year for CALEA. We have had that here in November and that went okay. So we passed the first year in our cycle since our full accreditation. So we will continue with all of what CALEA requires of keeping our policies and everything updated. So we're working there. Glancing at this, obviously the highlights there is the wage increase, and then as I mentioned, we've got the retirements. So we'll need to hire another officer come early 2021 to get us back up to our 65 officer strength. The dispatcher aspect, we would like to add a 12th dispatcher. Our dispatchers are kind of the unsung heroes of our department. They get stuck in that room and they work long shifts with mandatory overtime sometimes, that kind of stuff. Increasing it by that 1 person gives us a little bit more flexibility with regards to covering for sick time, vacation times, things like that. We run 3 shifts. There's 3 dispatchers assigned to each shift currently. We have a lead communication officer who supervises everything. And then we have 1 person that works kind of a swing shift. Adding that 12th person will allow us to get a second swing shift in there to where we're able to run an 11A to 7P shift, 5 days a week that is, and then a 7P to 3A shift to help give overlap and stuff. One thing we noticed with COVID, and we've been trying to increase dispatch for a little while now, but when COVID came and we started to lose a few people out of that room, it kind of showed us that it doesn't take a lot of manpower issues to where we start thinking about trying not to be crippled in dispatch. Obviously, overtime, we have to pay out from time to time because it is a bare bones crew that if someone is sick, something like that, then another shift has to be called in. Another person from the shift has to be called in. So, but having that 12th person will definitely help give us some leeway with regards to that kind of time because we can adjust their schedules to cover scheduled time off, things like that. Also will help on the training aspect if we can have some flexibility there if we want to send some dispatchers to training and things. It gives us more opportunity there. Speaking of training, our training budget, we have a kind of a substantial training budget. A lot of our training classes that we had scheduled in 2020, unfortunately, were canceled. And to date, they've not been rescheduled. So we have some catch up to do with some of our in-house instructors. Training is very important for all officers. We'd like to send a number to different instructor type class schools where they can be trained to instruct so they can go get the training, come back and then pass it on to everybody that works here. We will be looking to catch a lot of those people up. It's very important with regards to like our patrol division. Over a third of the officers in that patrol division have less than 3 years of experience. So we're a young department. We need to keep up with the training aspect on that. Going forward in 2021, we'd like to, we've been putting off kind of a dispatch upgrade on our desks and stuff. We're working that into the budget. We're going to continue with assisting the other departments with their security camera projects, some of the satellite offices and stuff. That's been a work in progress. We'll continue assisting computer services with that. We're looking at transforming the old city gym into a training facility. We were able to obtain a $20,000 grant from the state crisis intervention training group. And with that, we were able to purchase tables and chairs, audio visual equipment, that kind of thing. We currently have that over there, but the facility itself is still a gym with a rubber floor and needs some upgrades to the heating, air conditioning, that kind of stuff. So we're looking at trying to get that taken care of. It will open up the opportunity for other city departments to use it as a training facility. It will allow us to have the opportunity to host some schools. A lot of the schools we have, if we can host, we get free spots. So as long as we have a place to put them in to the training, we can bring outside people from other agencies in, helps with us saving dollars, training dollars by getting the free slots. And then Tyler Tech, once we get this Brazos in and everything, we will have a full package there with regards to pulling statistics, things like that. I would ultimately like to kind of get into the data-driven policing and see what we can do on that front with regards to identifying hot spots, trouble areas, that kind of thing, and helping dedicate some resources there to help take care of whatever that problem is. It's something that pulling data in our old system was always kind of a hard thing to do, but we've seen some improvement in the Tyler aspect of it, so we're hoping to kind of use that to help focus, if you will, some of the officers into specific areas and stuff so that we can smooth out any bumps we have. That's pretty much it until if you got any questions, obviously.
Chief, I think that was a good point that you brought up about lacking some of the training. Certainly that looks, just glancing at the line items, looks like you spent out of about 55,000, you maybe got 20 spent. So significantly hampered your training abilities.
I would say we lost probably at least a couple dozen classes this year.
Yeah. Well, good luck. Hopefully those can come back this year. Can you hit real quick? I think we have a couple minutes before the next one is scheduled to start. What does the e-citation and the data flow for that do for our police department?
It helps speed up the entire process. Cuts down on the time that an officer has to be on the traffic stop, cuts down on the time that the violator has to be there as well. It processes the ticket rather quickly. It goes directly to municipal court once it's approved by the supervisor, and then they can do what they need to do with it. And then with regards to like our CLIA accreditation stuff, it helps us pull all the data for the bias-based policing and that kind of thing. So if we need to see what type of race or sex or whatever kind of person we're given that citation to, we can pull those data and it gives us an accurate count.
Right. I think that's one small example. Tyler's a big one, but investing in technology to help the same number of people be more productive and more effective, and doing less redundant activities in terms of data entry and coordination even between departments has been a real focus of the police department. And I appreciate all the members of the department that are constantly looking out for those efforts.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chief and Paul, and certainly want to echo that. I know it's been an interesting year to take over, and your department under your leadership and certainly under Chief Dunbar before you have done a fantastic job, and I've enjoyed working with you on all of the issues that have come up, and I know you have a great vision to utilize some of that data that is becoming available as we continue to get that to be able to work with our community. I do not see any hands raised. However, are there any council members that have questions on anything for the chief or Paul or myself on the budget as you've been reviewing it? So just to recap, for those who may be watching, less than a 1% change in budget from 2020 to 2021. That is including our contractual 1.31% raise. So the department is certainly doing a great job of managing those expenses, keeping our department up to date and with the times to be able to better serve our community, but doing so judiciously as we manage our finances. So hearing and seeing nobody's tried to virtually throw a tomato at me, we will go ahead and move on to the fire department. Thank you so much, Chief Ring, for presenting and continuing to lead your department.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, Chief Eberly, I believe we have you on the line. So Paul, I'll go ahead and let you do the initial overview and then hand it off to the chief.
Thank you, Mayor. The numbers, of course, with regard to the safety expenses look the same in the chart. Fire department is down a little bit. So again, to Jeff's earlier point, the budgets are pretty flat from 20 to 21. $69,000 difference on a $7.8 million budget is pretty insignificant. So in light of the wage increase, which we might want to touch on real quick because it shows up in a lot of the budget documents, why 1.31 wage increase for those people that are watching online or reviewing the budget. What's the deal with the wage increase when we're looking at a 10% decline in revenue? Well, years ago, the administration and the unions got together and we worked out a plan to tie wages and the growth in wages or the flattening out of wages to our income tax revenues so that we would have a baseline for pay that's not based on arbitrary guesses as to what the future might hold or what the current cash position in the city is, more tied to what the performance of the city looks like from a revenue perspective. It was a huge, in my opinion, a huge collaboration, a lot of discussion, and a big win for both the employees and the administration and the city, because we're able to actually take our wages and tie them to what happens on a 3-year rolling scale to our revenue. So in the future, if we do see these -9s and -10s come to fruition, we will see the wage increases go significantly lower or potentially go to zero. On the other hand, if we're able to recognize some diversity in business, some growth in business, and we don't see the economic impacts that we think might happen, our employees will reap the benefits, as will the general fund, along with wage scale. So just a couple seconds there with regard to why we're proposing that 1.31. If anyone has questions about what that looks like contractually and wants more detail on that, feel free to reach out to me and I'll get you all the information that you need.
Paul, I do just real quick want to hit on that too, because that is something that is, I don't want to say very unique, but pretty unique. When I talk to other mayors and they are dealing with significant frustration between, their employees and their organization, in what should pay look like, and the kind of the conversation that goes around that. This has been something that has positioned us really well to be on the same team and to be rooting for our community and be very transparent with our employees on what to expect, and us being able to factor that in very early, into the next year. And so that is certainly something that serves us very well. I do see Councilman Russell, you have your hand up, so I'll go ahead and let you comment real quick if you'd like.
And just to reiterate from previous comments, as I go into the budget and I look at this, protection of this contract and what it does is paramount as I look at our budgeting. And so I once again, I tip my hat, Paul, to you and the mayor for first even devising this contract, and to the unions for joining in with us, and protecting this is just at the top of my list as a council representative. And I appreciate the fact that we have this, that our employees know well in advance what the following year looks like because of contract stability. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. All right, Paul, we'll hand it back over to you.
Chief, I just, went through the numbers real quick. Go ahead and hit on your accomplishments and what you want to get done next year.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is Josh Eberly. Good to see everybody virtually. If I could just add my 2 cents onto the wage discussion. I also think it's very unique. It does position us well. And I'm really proud of the members of the fire department union for them jumping on board with that. It shows really on both sides, labor and management. It shows a lot of trust. So that's pretty awesome, because not all cities can say that. And historically, we couldn't say that either. So it's really cool. Regarding the budget and the fire department, it's funny because this year has been so crazy, and it's both gone extremely fast and extremely slow, if that's possible. But when we were putting these budget summary sheets together, started listing the achievements that we were able to do this year in spite of COVID, and I feel pretty good about it once we put this list together. We did hire 3 new firefighters to replace vacancies we had at the beginning of this year. And to Councilman Russell's point, I think there was concern, when the pandemic hit, and we were able to reassure them. And I'm glad that we were able to fill those vacancies this year. We had 3 additional firefighters, existing firefighters, that we sent to EMT school for that certification. We were able to promote 1 firefighter to fill a captain's vacancy. Gary Clevenance is now Captain Clevenance. We did something that I thought was really cool that was related to the pandemic, was the Camp 911 that we've been doing for a couple of years now. That program has really been growing, and that is a program that we do locally. The fire department joins with police and sheriff's office and Hanco and a number of other agencies that took the place of Safety Town, which kind of ceased to exist a number of years ago. And we were able to do that and greater than it has been the last 2 years. Mayor?
You're good. You just cut out for a second. So
Oh,
continue.
well, my computer just told me that my internet is unstable. So
As
if
long as
that,
it's the internet, we're okay.
yeah, if that happens again, just let me know. Camp 911, we were able to expand it. We actually included 387 kids across the county this year, and we put together activities for them and scheduled out really a whole week worth of safety related activities, and provided them Camp 911 bags, which went along with all those different activities to do. So that was a huge undertaking. Give a lot of credit to Beth Baker here, our administrative assistant, who kind of heads that up. So I was pretty proud of that accomplishment. We did do a number of things. Paul touched on some technology improvements. We did the same thing here. We purchased some additional software to get rid of some of our outdated paper check sheets and that kind of thing, inventory forms, and we can do that via smartphone now or tablet. Streamlines a lot of the workflow, I guess. It makes it pretty user friendly for our guys. And we did install additional wireless access points in all the stations to increase our city's Wi-Fi coverage in the fire stations, with a lot of help from computer services. And we also installed an electronic display board here at Station 1 that shows active calls and a map of the city and on-duty firefighters and that kind of thing. We also, I think, really had some cool achievements regarding grants this year. Through BWC's Safety Intervention Grant Program, we were able to purchase some Paratech rescue struts, which help with vehicle stabilization and building stabilization, and then some other safety implementations that are designed to reduce workers' exposure to injury. And we were able to do that for 25 cents on the dollar through their grant program. So that was pretty great. And one of our battalion chiefs, Matt Cooper, headed up a firehouse grant firehouse subs grant application for us, and was able to get about $40,000 worth of new thermal imaging cameras for us. So we were able to outfit all of our fire trucks with a new thermal imaging camera, which replaced some of the outdated ones that we had. So I thought that was pretty cool. Going into 21, big thing for me, and I know the mayor and Paul are really a driving force behind this, is the Strict Center. We're doing very well on funding. Ideally, we can finish up that fundraising, hopefully early into next year, and we can move towards construction. Right now we're sitting at, if memory serves me correctly, $650,500 that we have either received or committed, thanks to council's support of that as well, through last year's capital plan, and that's out of the goal of $1 million. So we're 2/3 of the way there, and hopefully we see some movement either at the state capital level, or we can get some additional funding partners locally. We do have some vacancies to fill next year. We did have a couple of resignations late in 2020 that were a little bit unexpected, and we do have some planned retirements next year. So we've selected 3 firefighters, and they have a start date of January 25th. So we'll be able to fill those vacancies pretty quick. Regarding the budget, like Paul said, we really worked hard to keep it flat. When we do have a lot of retirements, which, just like the police department, our department has gotten extremely young, extremely fast. New employees, frankly, are cheaper than more senior employees. So that's helped us keep some of our costs down on the salaries line item. And we've been able to squeeze some of the other individual line items to keep our budget really flat. So I think that's about all I have. Sorry, that was very wordy.
No, that was good. All good info, Chief. I should have said this during Chief Ring's time as well, but I can catch you both. We talked a lot about COVID and its economic impact. There's also an impact on all first responders and frankly, all of our department level workers who never shied away from doing their job every day. You guys never changed what you did, even though we don't do EMS runs technically. You still continue to assist, even at a time when nobody really knew what was going on with this thing. So I just wanted to echo, I know we've said it before, but for those department workers and emergency responders that are listening, certainly appreciate that effort as we hopefully roll out of that in 2021. Also, Chief, it's good to have leaders in our departments, but also in our community. What award did you just win?
That was the CARES Award from, I think it was the Ohio Department of Behavioral Health. So that was unexpected, but very appreciated. That was due to some of the I sit on the Adams board. Based on my position here at the fire department, I can help implement some changes regarding opiate response and that kind of thing. So that was very appreciated.
And instead of getting that award in front of 2,000 people, you got it in front of like 5, one of which was me. So congratulations again. And again, appreciate you being a leader in the department, in the city, as well as the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you both. That's a great overview and certainly have a lot to be proud of, and certainly echo Paul's comments. Our departments have done a great job of adjusting and continuing to operate every single day during this time while making sure that they're considerate and keeping their coworkers and families safe. And that's always a priority for us. I see Councilman Russell has his hand raised. So Councilman Russell.
Chief, firefighter Mark Ryan from Columbus was up here a couple of years ago to talk about cancer and firefighters. And I know that we implemented a handful of measures because of that. I believe the garage doors was part of that. Can you give us a quick update as to where we are with the rest of our efforts in that area? And I guess the other part of it, and I know the answer is yes, but how mindful is Mark Ryan's message with Findlay Fire Department to this day?
Yeah, it's pretty great. When he came up and kind of, he laid out a best practices plan for us, I guess, regarding firefighter cancer prevention. And I'm happy to say that I think we've achieved all of those different points. If I remember right, there was about 10 or 12 different aspects of an overall comprehensive cancer prevention plan. And with council's help and with some grant funding as well, a big part of it was those exhaust removal systems. And, just as big a part was changing the culture of the fire department. And Mark, his presentation did a big part of that, or was the driving force behind that. And there are some parallels, between cancer prevention and the pandemic that we're going through, just because it's all about reducing your exposure or eliminating or reducing your exposure, and whether it's to carcinogens or the possibility of exposure to a virus, you take the steps that you need to do to reduce the possibility of exposure. So I know it might be a stretch to say those two things are parallel, but there are some definite consistencies to that message, at least. So I'm very happy where we are with cancer prevention. It's to the point now where it's just kind of second nature for our guys to do the things that we implemented. And it simply is, it's something as simple as doing a gross decon on fire scenes. When you come out and you're covered with soot or ash or something, and you do those gross decon things on scene, and they do it automatically now. So it's really cool. It doesn't even have to be a reminder to the guys or anything. It's just part of what they do now. And just like Chief Ring said with their young department, a third of our department, 21 of our guys have been hired since 2016. So when they come into a place where those things are established, those processes are established, that's where you see real change, because they don't know any different. So it's really pretty cool to see.
Awesome. I don't see any other hands raised. Are there any other questions from council or any comments from Paul or Chief Eberly? Okay, well, thank you so much, Chief, for your presentation and your hard work. We will go ahead and move on to the next department, which is computer services. So Brent, I will kind of give, perfect, okay. So I will go ahead and kind of give the initial overview and then hand it off to you. As you can see on the budget summary before you, just a little under $9,000 increase from prior year. Again, as we've been mentioning, that contract that was negotiated related to wages, though it really stemmed out of conversations with the unions, we apply that to all of our employees, which is fantastic. That, again, providing that consistency and transparency, that obviously is a cost. And we have a number of other minor projects going to maintain the current staff, but really just minor changes there. So I'll kick it over to Brent, because he'll really get a hit on the cool work they're doing to continue to ensure that our departments and our city is able to operate. And before I do that, though, I would be remiss if I did not mention the work that Brent and his team did, making sure that we were prepared to be able to have any employees that could work virtually, getting us set up with technology, with streaming council meetings, being able to do these Zoom meetings, being able to connect us on YouTube right now, all of those redundancies and cybersecurity issues, those things that we just take for granted because they work every day. And then they only hear from folks when things go wrong. Want to say thank you to his team for all of the work that they did to have that seamless transition. So thank you. And I'll hand it over to you, Brent.
All right. Yeah, we're so for 2020, we're working to keep our budget numbers close. We're working to keep our 2021 budget numbers as close as we can to 2020. We did have an unexpected vacancy in our programmer position in the middle of this year, so we've had some pains getting the new programmer up to speed and catching him up on everything the former programmer is working on. So that's taken up a lot of our time this year, but we are comfortable with our staffing levels now. We're able to keep up with day-to-day work while maintaining work on our various ongoing projects that we have with different departments in the city, as well as projects that our department has for the entire city. We are working towards getting our storage area network replaced the end of this year and early next year. That's going to be moving to a hyper-converged infrastructure. So that'll increase speeds of all of our various applications and keep up with the growing server load that we have we've had consistent growth in the number of servers and the amount of processing power needed over the past several years. So that'll definitely help there. We're also hoping to finish our disaster recovery project early next year. That's been ongoing for a couple years now. It has gotten moved to the back burner a couple times, most recently due to COVID and you know, things we had to do to prep for that. So, but that project will make sure that we're ready for any sort of disaster in our main municipal building in the data center there, or any sort of issues with fiber ring or anything like that. We're hoping to have that fully functional by the middle of next year. We're also continuing to increase our network security and redundancy. That's always at the forefront of what we're working on. You know, just keeping up with the ever-changing threat landscape, and you know, of course, making sure that we're redundant to the point that if we were to have any sort of issues with any of our network or equipment, we'd be able to continue working without issues. But that's basically all I have. If there's any questions.
Are there any questions from anyone? I know technology is always super exciting when we talk about the number of servers we have and redundancies and cybersecurity. But again, super important, and the computer services department do a fantastic job. I don't think I've failed, knock on wood, lately any of my phishing tests that I receive very frequently. But those are always fun. I don't think I see any questions. Well, perfect. Thank you, Brent, for continuing to manage that team and make sure we operate effectively, especially in this virtual age. All right. Well, with that, we will move over to zoning and NEAT with Eric Adkins. Again, I'll go over kind of the initial presentation you see before you. Really not a whole lot of excitement here. 1.3% increase from prior year with 1.31% wage increases. They're going to maintain their current staff. They are continuing to, you'll see some dollars requested in the budget for some property cleanup. I'm going to love for Eric to talk a little bit about this, and we'll certainly try to get you all some pictures sometime in the next couple of weeks of a number of the properties around town that were dilapidated, had infestations of different raccoons and cats, and had been abandoned. And Eric's team has been working to get those properties cleaned up. And the funds that you all provided last year were able to help us get those demolished, those properties assessed. We hope to recoup those funds in later years, but gotten some fantastic emails from citizens who were neighbors of properties that they had been frustrated by, and glad to see that taken care of in a proper fashion. So with that, Eric, I will hand it over to you to talk a little bit about 2020 and what you have planned for 2021.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, councilmen, councilwomen, fellow staff that's on the Zoom call. A little bit different this year, going through COVID. Hope you guys are being safe and making this thing go. So in 2020, we had one big major highlight, which was the zoning map update. Finally got through council and will be adopted next week, I do believe. And that was a major thing that happened for us. It's been going on for quite some time, and I'd like to thank some individuals, including Paul, Matt, and his staff at HRPC, council members who sat through P&Z meetings with us to iron out some wrinkles. and importantly, Mayor Murin and her leadership and determination to get this through legislation to be adopted for the 21 year. Her leadership helped get us to that point. So I'd like to thank you guys. Another major thing that we have done in 2020 was we have been more active in enforcement of demoing dilapidated and blighted properties throughout the city. Excuse me. It's helped beautify quite a few of our neighborhoods, and the neighbors have been very gracious and happy for the efforts that we've put in place to eliminate some eyesores that they've been looking out for some up to 12 to 13 years. Yes, the cost may be an issue. We've averaged $6,000 per property. We tore down 8 this year. We will recoup the cost, like the mayor said, through either payment from the property owner or eventually through tax assessments if they don't pay the bill due. And also through going through the COVID, we have stayed busy in the zoning department, surprisingly. All of our permits have been up. Our inspections to close out permits have been up. So we've stayed very busy, surprisingly. Going into 2021, some of our highlights include a zoning code update that we've been working through, the legality and case study law with a lawyer out of Toledo that specializes in zoning law. He's fixing a section that, or his sign section, which in 2015, the Supreme Court ruled that a lot of those jurisdictions can't regulate signs. The actual wording and First Amendment speech on signs. So he's going through there to make sure that we're not having any issues with the Supreme Court ruling. Another major thing that we'll be doing is in that zoning code update, we're going to further pursue the ability to pursue property cleanups via civil cases. I know we talked about it last year in our budget meeting that we were looking to go forward with that, but we ran into some issues talking with the zoning lawyer that he's going to make sure that we're going to be able to do it via the zoning code. It's going to be very helpful and quick, make quick work for some of the criminal cases that we're still going, taking a year to a year and a half to get a verdict on, shrink up that time drastically. And finally, we are working with the computer department with Brent and his guys to create a page to update citizens on their complaints that they're filing throughout the city to give them a in time and on time, right there, real time update, so they don't have to continue to email and question us. They can see where our progress will be throughout the progress of the cases. And that's hopefully we'll have that rolled out by the end of 2021, which will be a benefit to the city. So any questions?
Perfect. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate one item that Eric mentioned right there at the end. I know we get questions and you frequently as council members will get questions from citizens on, hey, I reported an issue with this property. What's the status of that? So we are trying to make a public facing version of our tracking system that we utilize that would allow property owners to, or individuals that would like to file a complaint to see the status of that complaint, as well as if there are other issues with that. One other item I wanted to make you all aware of that we'll be having further conversation around here in the near future is regulations around marijuana. The moratorium around that is up, and the laws could be changing. And so we want to start that conversation to make sure our community is prepared to be able to address that however we would like from a legal perspective before we start having any issues I'll say pot up. Haha, that's a good one. But want to make sure we're on top of that. So more information to follow. Listen, we have to have punny jokes if we're going to sit through 3 hours of, virtual budget, meetings. I'm all for finance stuff, but just going through it is not the most exciting. So are there any other questions on the zoning and NEAT department? Okay, Councilman Hellman, I can unmute you if you'd like. See if all right, I clicked ask to unmute. I think you're nope, you're still muted. Can you unmute Councilman Hellman?
Bless you. How's that?
There you go. I can hear you now.
All right, thank you. When you talk about marijuana, are you talking about growing or using?
All of the different perspectives, primarily dispensing, production, and distribution. Those are really the main ones as we see that changing in other states. How from a zoning perspective, can we make sure that our community is positioned to make sure that that is appropriately managed?
Good. Okay. Thanks for the clarification. I just wasn't sure where you were headed with that. I do have a question for Eric, and it has to do with zoning and taking care of dilapidated structures and abandoned properties, dilapidated places. Eric, do we have we ever considered using a land bank program?
It has been discussed in the past, and I know that the mayor would like to have discussions about that in the future, but we would have to work hand in hand with the county, and they would have to be up for that discussion.
Yeah, so land banks have to be done at the county level. We've looked into it from a municipal level. We cannot. So there has been some concern from the county on if they're interested in doing that, but that's certainly a conversation that I have frequently and will continue to bring up with the new commissioners when they get in their positions to see how we can continue that conversation. But I think that would be a great asset to not only the city, but countywide.
I would agree, and I'm glad to hear that. If I can help, let me know.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, for all you've done.
Well, thank you, Councilman.
I will mute you again, Councilman Hellman. All right, you're muted. Other questions for Eric? I see shaking heads. All right, well, wonderful. Thank you all so much. Eric, anything you wanted to add?
No, again, I appreciate all the help and hard work that we put into this zoning map citywide, and I appreciate it. You guys have a good evening.
Thank you. All right, well, we will move on to city income tax. This evening, we have both Andrew Thomas, the current tax administrator, as well as Corey Duran, who is the incoming tax administrator. What you have before you, not anything super exciting, have the wage increase as well as a little bit of changes in the suspended increase in their legal service fees. That's tied back to increases in the fees that the Findlay Municipal Court has gone through as they regularly do, updating their fee structure. So that is that increased cost. As you can see in that kind of pie chart, the breakdown of between net tax collections, city income tax, and the refunds, just giving you that high level overview. And then I will really hand it over to Andrew and Corey to kind of dig into more detail. Do I have Andrew and Corey on the line? All right, I see Corey, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. We're having some technical difficulties here, but good evening. I think we just need Mr. Thomas to unmute and he should be ready to go.
Andrew, I'm not sure if you are dialed in on a phone, 7802, or I do see Andrew_Findlay, but I do not see a phone tied to it. So I think you might be dialed in separately. I am unmuted on the phone. Okay, go for it. I only see Corey unmuted. So I think if you are, let's try this one more time. I'll try to unmute you. Ask to unmute. Oh.
No, they can't. Sorry, Mayor. He is joining me in the office here. We're gonna mask up and just do this in the same office. So I apologize. Give me just one moment.
No worries. It would not be a virtual meeting without some form of technical difficulty. So if this is it, I'm cool with it.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now, Mayor?
Yes, Andrew. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I was doing things like I normally did, and I was unmuted. But anyway, we're here. So one of the things we tend to focus on, the past due collections is usually a good indication of our productivity. We were off to a slow start at the beginning of the year, and then we were impacted pretty heavily because of COVID. Municipal court was not accepting cases or garnishments there for a while. So in April, we were down almost 17%, but now year to date, we're up almost 8%, which is about $100,000 spread. So we're pleased about that. And we're back up and running at full capacity for wage garnishments and small claims cases, thanks to municipal court. And of course, big news with Corey starting. We're transitioning a lot of tasks and showing Corey a lot of things. We're pleased at the types of things that are surfacing so we can show Corey how to solve some of those problems and how we've handled things in the past. Roger Rader, who is one of our collection attorneys, is also retiring. So we're transitioning some of our collections to the person who's purchased Roger Rader's business. And then also a software engineer who's worked for our department as an outside contractor for 17 years. We'll also end that at the end of this year. So we're in the process of finding someone who can replace him. And so that's two of the major things we're working on right now. And with that, I'll just open up to questions.
Thank you, Andrew. I see Councilman Russell.
Andrew, with the software developer transitioning, what kind of risk is that to the ability to the department?
You know, the system is running smoothly, so we don't have any need for a lot of support. So as far as the risk, I'd say it's minimal right now. We had a promising conversation with representatives of a company that's the sister to the company that employs the existing contractor. And so I feel very good about where that might head. And it may slow some of the new development down a little bit as the new person gets acclimated with what we have now. But we're running smoothly, and it should not be a hindrance at all.
Thank you, Andrew. Other questions on the income tax department budget?
Mayor, I had a quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
Andrew and Corey, welcome. By the way, I ran into you at the council office, but it's nice to have you on board. Just looking at the sheet that's up on the screen, the personnel services is up 14%, almost $60,000 versus last year. What is that made up of?
That's a lot of vacation I didn't use and a lot of sick leave I didn't use. That's the retirement buyout.
So that's you.
It will accrue. Yeah, that's me.
Okay. Great, Andrew. Enjoy it.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we could still just decline his retirement acceptance. I think I might have that ability.
Well, Corey wouldn't be
as long as we can keep Corey here too.
Well, you know, I'm sure we could work something out. So. Other questions? All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on. Next, we have the airport with Matt McVicker. You know, what you see before you is exciting, you know, having a lower budget than prior year, but I will really let Matt dig into that because that's not always a great thing, as we'll explain a little bit. So Matt, given there's not a whole lot of excitement, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, everybody. to touch on that specifically, showing that budget total dropping 11%. A lot of that has to do with the cost of goods sold, that being jet fuel. Jet fuel has tanked in cost, good for us in acquiring it and being able to put a nice healthy margin on it, but the demand is also low as well. So a lot of that has to do with we decreased our budget for aviation fuel in 2021. Looking at the budget highlights there, we do share a resource and a clerk with the cemetery department. It's been a great arrangement, and Barb's a good asset to the airport. Again, the average cost of jet fuel is supposed to be pretty much flat with 2020 levels. We're not looking at any staffing level changes, looking at four full-time and 1 part-time, as in this past year. As far as capital improvement highlights, we did onboard a new tractor, replacing one of 20 years of service. Moving into achievements for 2020, it's been a slower year in aviation, as a lot of you could probably understand, with the needs for in-person travel, the demand for that lower. Obviously, we service general aviation and not the airlines, but business travel is down, and the corporate business aviation sector, that does have a direct impact on our bread and butter business of the airport, which is the sale of jet fuel. And with a lot of these companies, 25 plus of them that usually come through the airport, the activity is really down this year. As far as the achievements, again, we did complete our fiscal year 19 ODOT aviation grant, direct grant project. It was the first state grant that we've gotten for the airport, I believe ever, and it was to replace and relocate our windsocket airport beacon onto separate structures on the airfield. Some that are familiar with the skyline over by the airport, there was 2 towers, there now is just 1. The original tower housing both the airport beacon and windsock was torn down after both of those were replaced new and in different locations on the airport. We did retain an airport beacon that sat on top of that tower, had 60 years plus of life. We retained it as a historical artifact for the airport. As the Lima Avenue project came to a close in 2020, we were left with having to resurface a lot, top seal it, crack seal it, and restripe it with its final configuration after that project, as well as alleviate a storm or a ponding issue we had as a result of that project as well in our terminal building parking lot. So we took care of that. Had to unfortunately replace our AC during the middle of the summer, this past summer, so that was interesting, but we had to take care of it. Moving into 2021 objectives, we are looking to complete 2 FAA grant projects that were backlogged and pushed into 2021 construction season due to construction scheduling and some other issues. So looking to get both our runway 725 rehab, which is a crack seal and remark, done this summer, along with rehabilitation of a southern portion of our taxiway that parallels our north-south runway. We'll also be applying for a fiscal year 21 FAA grant. It shows that it is a design and construct. Recent conversations with the FAA indicate that we're looking for this grant in 2021 to just cover the design portion because it is a sizable project. Also looking to fully implement a new point of sale system that's been in the works for a year or so. We're looking to replace a terminal building furnace and also replace another John Deere tractor we use on field. I will mention a few months back, we did make an announcement that we were looking to have our Findlay Air Expo at the airport. We have decided to forego that into 2021 with obvious issues with COVID, the fundraising aspect of it, and what it will look like going into June as far as having folks congregated. So we have forgone that event that was slated for Saturday, June 5th, 2021. And with that, I'll toss it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And that is really neat about keeping the light. I know that's such a small thing, but I appreciate you guys thinking of that and keeping that as a historical reminder of that. I have fond memories of seeing that beacon. Are there any questions from council on the airport budget? Yes, Councilman Wobser.
Just a quick question, and Matt, if you answered this, I apologize. How much were your jet fuel sales down this year versus 19?
50% year to date. It is
exactly 50%.
Yep. As of yesterday, just slightly over 50% year to date. A lot of that has to do with the both our base corporate customers, but also our transient corporate customers that come in and out. The majority of that downfall has been the transient customer rather than our base customer.
So really, it's just people coming to visit Findlay aren't coming to visit us as much.
Via the airport, correct?
Right, right. Thank you.
Jeff, you can, and I think that's a good point because when you take a look at the projection relative to the budget, you can see what those dollars look like. And you can see where the impact of that expense is. And so the loss of the expense in terms of fuel purchase lessens the budget, but it also hurts on the revenue side, which you'll see is impacting the subsidy going forward from this year and, you know, based on Matt's projections going into next year as well.
Yeah, thanks for touching on that, Paul. I was going to say the same thing. So great. Any other questions for Matt? All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for going over that. All right, moving on. Let's make sure I go to the right thing next. It looks like we have a couple-minute break built in here. We are slightly ahead of schedule. So how about I give everybody nobody wants a break? No break. Okay, if you need a break, you can message me. Otherwise, we'll keep going. If somebody needs a red alert button, just, send me a private message and you need a timeout. Yeah, do a timeout signal. All right. Well, but otherwise then we'll chug along, moving on to engineering. And again, trying to keep our budgets pretty close to what they were last year and continuing to manage those. What you see before you, less than 0.5% increase, about $3,600 proposed. Small amount of that is really in that, again, discretionary area. We're keeping our personnel as protected as possible. We have that small discretionary other line items. And so I will let Brian take over and talk a little bit about what they are seeing in their budget for this past year and what they're looking at in 2021.
All right, just like to start by re-emphasizing what Deidre mentioned with civil service. She does split her time with engineering, and that does get billed back to us. So she does a great job. She helps out at the front desk. She helps with bonds, permitting, making sure the contractors have all the forms they need. And that's a really big help for us. So I'm glad that we can continue that into the future. As far as the staffing level, I did want to point something out. There was an increase from 2019 to 2020. That was, I was planning on hiring an additional project manager with the budgets and the revenue and what things went. I did not hire another person, but it is still showing 7 because with my job title changing, I got moved from the service director department back into engineering. So we're not actually increasing staff, but the staff has increased. So it's a little confusing, so I want to make sure I cleared that up. As far as highlights for 2020, I did want to point out that we've applied for engineering's applied for approximately $1.16 million in grants. To date, we know that we've been awarded $522,000 of that. The other $637,000 and some change we're still waiting on. A couple of the people changed their schedules due to the COVID thing. So usually we know by now, but it's probably going to be February, March before we find out on the rest of that. But I want to point that out. And the next bullet item there, I did estimate we're going to receive just over $44,000 in reimbursement for construction engineering. I do need to clarify that. We had 3 projects this year that we would normally be able to do that on the 236 project, Lantern and Lincoln, and the East Main Cross project. I should have did a little more research before I put that in here, because it turned out on 2 of the projects, our final estimate was higher than it was originally. So what ODOT normally does is they set aside funds for reimbursement for construction inspection. On those 2 projects, instead of doing that, they gave that as part of the grant. So that actually works out better for us because we got all of that funding instead of just a portion of it. So just to clarify that, that $44,500 is probably going to be more in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. I prefer to have a more accurate number on that, but the Blanchard Lincoln Streets, the project that we will get reimbursed on, we submitted last week to get reimbursed for about, I believe it was $18,500-ish dollars for that. That was time through the middle of November. So we will have some time here, end of November, beginning of December, plus when they come back next year to put up new poles when the traffic signal poles come in and redo that. We will be able to submit for that. Other achievement with the help from the auditor's office, we were able to get our fringe rate increase and approved through ODOT.
Hey, Brian.
So yes.
Hey, sorry to cut you off, but your audio is not coming through very good on my end. I don't know if it's me or if you're using headphones, but if you could either slow down talking a little bit or try something different, it might help. It's like the back half of almost every other word is kind of butchered.
Well, I told you I was going to try to be as boring as possible, so maybe that was my ploy.
Whatever you changed is working now.
Okay. I'll just try to slow down then. So like I started to say there, with the help of the auditor's office, we were able to resubmit our fringe rate. It was up for renewal. We did get that renewed and that had a slight increase. So that'll help with the funds that we can get reimbursed for all the state and federal funded projects that we get grant money on. As far as 2021 objectives, unfortunately, some of those are the same as my objectives 2020. I'm sure you're probably tired of hearing it, but because of COVID, schedules got changed and some things got pushed. But the one big one that's on there that was on there before was to possibly take the lead on setting up a metropolitan planning organization or an MPO for our area. I don't want to get too much into the weeds on that, but that's really going to depend on the census data and how the census data comes back. The Census Department set up a urban cluster for Findlay, and they take that population in that urban cluster. And if that population is over $50,000, we have to set up an MPO or join an existing MPO. 10 years ago when census was done, we were only short about, it was less than 4,000 people. I think it's like 35 and some change, 3,500 and some change. I don't see with the growth that we've had in the area, not just in the corporation limits, but around the outskirts, the south of the town, the housing developments that have gone in the last 10 years, the housing out at Deer Landing out off Williams Road, Hillcrest, Hunters Creek, Glenmar, and the last urban cluster that they did actually went up included the village of Van Buren. They decide how that gets broken up. I don't know if it has to do with if we provide them utilities or how they do that, but I'd be very surprised if we didn't have to do that. So that's one thing that I kind of want to take the lead on to make sure that we get the most benefit out of that. That will affect some of the grant funds that we can get and that we currently get. So that's a big thing that I want to make sure that we do what we can to do the best for the community with those funds. That's really all I had. I don't know if there's anything with my volume 4 or if there's anything that people want me to repeat or if they have any questions, but I'd be happy to answer any of them.
So to recap, one of the things I'm going to hit, just that you mentioned at the beginning, given some of the breakup with the noise, is that through the Blanchard Lincoln Street, when we originally projected that, we assumed that our inspection services would be reimbursed at a partial rate as they typically are, but that actually is covered at a larger portion. So we should receive some additional funds back from that. We're continuing to move forward on trying to utilize the GIS system for some public facing involvement, as we did with the capital budget last year. And I know we've gotten some good feedback on that. And then continuing to work on and look into, really at this point, when we receive census data, we may have to establish a metropolitan planning organization, which would kind of coordinate all of our planning efforts for the region. So once we know more how that will be impacted based off of the census results, we'll look at implementing that. Obviously, you can read everything else on the screen, so I won't go through it all. And Brian, appreciate you hitting on that. Are there any questions for Brian on the engineering department? Okay, pretty straightforward. Brian, thank you for that explanation and all of your team's work and keeping things moving. I know you guys have had a lot of projects going on and a lot of great ones accomplished. I know 236, Blanchard Street, Lincoln Street all look fantastic, and continuing to work on a number of other projects, hopefully looking at Western and Sandusky in the near future with that intersection. I know we've mentioned a couple times, so more to follow on that.
Just to follow up with that real quick, I do have a conference call next week with the Rail Commission. So hopefully I'll be able to give you an update here in the next week or two.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. Certainly appreciate that. I know you're tired of me asking about it every other week. So, all right. Well, last but certainly not least for today, all of the departments that go into our wonderful public works, we will go ahead. I'll give the brief overview. As you see, based off of the proposal before you, it's about a 6% decrease from prior year, about $282,000. A couple of the reasons being, we do have the increase in wages, but we do also have decreases in salt prices, which has a big impact that you see before you. Again, not a whole lot of change on personnel, have a slight shift in where some of our folks are going with Parks and Cemetery for 2021. But I will hand it over to Matt so he can really talk about what his department has been up to.
Thank you, and good evening to all of you. I'm here with Lisa because she's going to talk about the rec department next, and Dave, our street supervisor, and AJ are here. We're all far enough apart and everything, so we're following all those criteria. Yeah, you hit basically you hit on Mayor hit on the personnel. It's we got 38.5, and that's what we have. We just moved some people around, so that all stayed the same as far as our staffing levels go, and then 6 still at the rec department staying the same as well, so there's no changes there. And we're picking up the maintenance position at the municipal building because we currently back that up when Rodney's gone anyway. So talking to the administration about that, we all thought that was a good idea that we handled those duties. So we have a person down there working with him, learning that current position until he leaves in the spring. So and then the highlights with us, again, the mayor mentioned the salt is lower, that's good. And then we have the cost of living in ours as mentioned. Capital improvements. We've done some improvements at the pool, a lot of pump work out there, parking lot resurfacing, traffic light upgrades, and the park upgrades. And I'll talk a little bit about last year's achievements. We did $550,000 in street capital here. Some lighting projects, some upgrades, and traffic signals, upgrades in the recreation and cemetery, leaf pickup, pool maintenance, helping the zoning department with all their cleanups, and utilizing Hancock Park grant. And then some of the objectives this year, we're going to try to do 600,000 in street capital, and ongoing maintenance and upgrades to our ball fields, cemetery, pools, alleys, partnering with the YMCA on programs, and also the pool soccer program. We work closely with them on that, and trying to do some pavement work at Emory and Swale if possible. Van Shell, we're going to do a roof replacement and a whole upgrade on that building. It's one of our big projects this year we hope to get. And I just wanted to touch on the mill that Paul mentioned to council, the last council meeting, a little bit on that. And some of the advantages of that are the prep time is cut dramatically. I know Dave and I and AJ talked about it's probably 5, maybe 6 to 1 on how much we can prepare streets. We could probably do with that bill. We could probably do 5 to 6 to 1 on time. What it takes our crews to prep that street. Since we rented the mill this year, we found out that really went a lot faster because it dumps the material right in the dump truck as well. So a lot less cleanup. And it can be used for alleys, parking lots, and working in conjunction with the engineering department on projects. And another part of that that's in our favor is it's accurate to what depth you want to do, and it'll stay that same depth the whole period of time running it. So, and we figure we could maybe even pay for the unit out of some budget money and not have the debt for it'd be a 2021 machine probably. I mean, it would be if we had to buy a new one, but this one here is a 2019 and it's a reduced price. And maybe Paul can explain a little bit more about how we're looking at trying to buy it.
Yeah, I can do that, Matt. I'll do that as sort of a wrap up. I should have announced that as a little house cleaning item. I was going to hit that discussion and fill council in on where we're at with that, kind of at the end of the department level discussion.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, certainly appreciate that overview, Matt. And I think, I semi-joking, but, the Public Works Department is very aptly named because you're doing all the public's work, as we can see with the variety of services that your team does. And I know you guys take a lot of calls from me on lots of random little things, but those all add up. And I know that folks notice that and really appreciate your speedy attention to those matters. So thank you certainly for all of the work that your departments do and the planning. As Paul mentioned, we'll have a conversation a little bit more about the mill. I think we want to do recreation separately. So were there any questions on any of the items Matt mentioned? Okay, Randy, I see you. Go ahead and you can try to unmute, or if you need me to ask you to unmute.
There, I think I'm unmuted. Just was wondering, the salt barn, the location of the salt barn I know was discussed at one time. Do we have a location for the salt barn? If we're able to build it this year?
Yeah, Randy, that's a great question. I was going to bring that up. We had 2 sites that we were looking at originally. One of them was in the rear of our existing site. We got into soil conditions there. We were looking at Station 4. There were some screening concerns there. We went back to a property that is just south of the current street department right now. We haven't completely ruled that out from a facility perspective for the street department. But what we did was investigated both geotechnical and environmental on that property. And we're still evaluating the cost associated with foundations on the salt barn on that piece of property, but it doesn't look good. So we continue to do due diligence at different locations. I would say that based on what I've seen so far, that property south of the street department, while ideal from a location perspective, is probably not going to be great for the cost of construction relative to even acquiring a different piece of property. So
Okay.
I don't have a definitive answer. I don't know if Dave or Brian has anything to add to that. Kind of everybody's involved with that discussion. But right now, we're still continuing to explore the idea, look for a good place for it that's not going to cost us an arm and a leg in foundation work to do it. And in the meantime, Dave is collaborating with the county to work out salt storage for us to maintain our supply. Although we were down a little bit in salt cost, I think that Dave is really predicting a lot of use of salt this year. He and I have a wager, and we're going to get 30 snows that need to be plowed this year. So we could, salt barn discussion could be really relevant.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that, Paul. I appreciate that. And I'd just also like to state that I, as a councilman, I appreciate what the Public Works do on a daily basis. If I have an issue with something, I usually give them a call and it's taken care of right away. So I really do appreciate the Public Works Department, as all city employees, not just them, but they have helped me out a lot. So thank you.
Yeah, I think the work tracking process that those guys have, the ability to prioritize when things are urgent versus being able to talk to property owners when, you know, a tree does need to come down, but it doesn't need to come down right now. Put it on the list, make sure it gets done. There aren't a lot of items over the years that I've been here that get put on the list that get totally missed. They always get addressed with the manpower that we have. And I think that sort of goes back to the culture of the department, not just the street department, but the city. I mean, if you look at this budget, what we have is we know we have additional gas tax money coming in. These guys are talking about upping the street investment by $50,000 over last year, looking at creative ways to save us money, equipment purchases, and not talking about changing their staffing levels. That means we have people that want to work harder and do more. I don't think we can ask for more than that.
No, and I just want to reiterate, just thank you for everything that they do for us. So that's it.
Yep. We appreciate that, Randy. And as a former city employee, you know how diligent the departments are, and we appreciate it. Thanks.
Awesome. I did see Councilman Hellman, you unmuted. Did you have a question or comment?
I was going to ask the same question that was asked there about the salt barn and whether we'd found a new location for it. And I would also like to underscore, I guess, some of the comments that were made and compliments of the staff that's done such a great job this past year under some trying circumstances. So thanks to everybody. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you. And yeah, we will certainly keep everyone posted as we further kind of evaluate. Certainly want to keep that item in front of you all and make sure you guys know that that's something that we're continuing to work on, even if we don't have a definitive plan at this point. And the 30 snows, I'm really voting that, Dave, if you have the 30, I'm hoping you're wrong. That's based off of.
I would bet you, but you'd have to do different than with Paul because he's on a double or nothing because he did it last year.
Because he lost last year.
Yeah.
I know, which I really don't like, but 30 snows is a lot, but I know it's based off of the day. So I'm figuring there's probably some, Aztec calendar out there that's actually like the second or third of the month, and therefore we'll be all right. So anyways.
AJ's going for 15. He's going to meet us in the middle.
All right. That sounds wise. Somebody has to be reasonable. All right. Matt, did you have any other items before we moved on to recreation?
No, I don't. Just, I know a lot of people see the work we do and we appreciate it. We have a really good shop, and I'm I'm really happy with that. Good bunch of men and women working for us here. So that's all for me. Thanks.
Awesome. And I have it written down somewhere, and I apologize if folks have not stopped out to the Christmas tree and seen the lovely design that was put together by the folks in the shop, the little tree stand for the display sign. Our team, they came up with that on their own, wanted to add a little more festive cheer to the sign that shows where the tree was received from. Dave, can you remind me of the folks that put that together for us?
Chris Kramer and Gary Dick, they're in our fab shop.
Yeah, they do a great work. I love it. Makes me smile every morning, so I appreciate it. All right, well, moving on to recreation. So the budget you have before you, down 4% from prior year budget, so about $37,000. So continuing offsite tournament maintenance at Swale and Emory Adams Park. So obviously just maintaining our facilities. I will not steal any of Lisa's thunder related to some of the tournaments that we were able to bring in safely over this summer and the relationships that we have built. But Lisa, would love to have you talk a little bit about that as well and some of your other achievements. So I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, we definitely had an interesting time, being the governor shut down all of the recreation facilities for a while. So we ended up losing part of our ice season there in March. So we really did a focus on our ball fields for a while there until the end of May, May 26th, when they opened us back up. And as soon as they opened us back up, we were able to start, right off the bat. I mean, we didn't miss a beat in our schedule. We had every weekend booked at the Diamonds. We had several at Swale that we normally would have, but we also picked up additional tournaments at Swale. We picked up tournaments coming out of Michigan, a couple of them where folks were up in Michigan and down in Columbus that were looking for central locations. We ended up picking up here. So there were times we had a weekend where we actually had 20 of the ball fields here in town that were all being used for our different tournaments and things. So I told people, I said, if you're able to go somewhere in Findlay and not see a softball uniform, let me know, because we really had people everywhere. We had every last staff member, including myself, in doing ball field maintenance because we were out of bodies at that point. So, it helped to be able to pick up some of that. And we're actually going to see in 21 some retention of some of those tournaments. They liked our offsite fields. Ideally they'd like to be at the Diamonds, but that's already booked. But they like Findlay. They like the infrastructure that we have, the restaurants, the hotels, all the amenities. So they're going to keep coming back using Emory Adams, Riverside Rawson, Cooper, some of the smaller fields out by Emory. So that's a big plus. We weren't able to do our Keep Active program, because we couldn't be bringing people together. So we really looked at, virtual options, putting videos together on social media, collaborating. We had a big part in the Camp 911, providing the activities, working with Beth Baker there at the fire department. We were providing some grab and go type of items for the summer lunch program that they had at Glenwood School. Actually providing certain items like Frisbees, jump ropes, things like that kids could take home, and encouraging them to still keep active even though we couldn't do our normal activities. Spent a lot of time just collaborating with the facility users, trying to make sure that everybody understood what the COVID guidelines were, that we were all on the same page and doing what was best for player safety as well as spectators. Being able to have everybody there was a big thing. And we continue to do that. As governor changes different things, we continue to adjust our schedule to make sure that we're, following all guidelines that are out there. So that's been a big thing for us. We'll continue to do that in 21. And hopefully, we'll be successful as what we were in 20 with being able to host these things. So what we're hoping to do in 21 is to continue just to increase the public's awareness of what we have as far as the recreational opportunities, promoting all the different parks. We have great park system throughout the entire city. We just want to continue to have that social media presence to make people aware of these smaller parks in the neighborhoods that they may not be aware of. Continue to work with the Obesity and Diabetes Task Force. The obesity epidemic is always something that's in the back of our minds in recreation, and what we can do to help with, those efforts, being able to provide activities and working with the health department on, nutritional information, those types of things. We already kind of touched on the tournaments and retaining those and continuing to promote some of our other locations to try and draw new tournaments for those as well. And then we're hoping to get that last phase of our parking lots. We've got 2 of the 3 major parking lots upgraded. So we have that final parking lot, and then that'll have us really taken care of on the exterior. The last thing there, the implementation of the point of sale system has been a very long road coming. We're getting to the finish line. We're in the process of setting up the training for the staff to be able to get that up and running. Ran into a few snags today, actually in trying to do that, but hopefully here in the next week or so, we'll actually be able to have that new system up and running, and that will help us cutting down on our inventory time. A lot of this ties directly into our inventory system. So the time that we spend counting all the items weekly and tracking on different spreadsheets and things eliminate a lot of redundancies in paperwork and, less time putting all of it together. So that'll be a major plus for us. We continue to do a lot of collaborating with different groups. One of the big things I think that was pretty important to us, when we were able to open back up, was to have a consistent message. The high school has different facilities, the YMCA had different facilities, the city has different facilities, but we wanted to make sure that we were putting a unified message out there for everybody. So, working in the University of Findlay as well. So the 4 of us all kind of sat down, came up with, consistent, as far as, what the usage for the different fields and ball fields and basketball courts, just everything, making sure that everybody knew, because we didn't want them having one set of rules at one facility and then finding there's different rules at other facilities. So, putting as much information together as we could, sharing it across the different social media platforms, I think was a big help once we were able to get going again. So.
That's awesome, Lisa. And certainly I want to give you a huge shout out, because I don't know the number of hours that, Matt was involved, but certainly Lisa and I were on conversations on phones, reading all the different orders, trying to figure out how we adjust our programs, our facilities, try to make sure that we're maximizing their utilization and working with the different organizations to be able to have their programming. And I know it was very challenging at times to take calls from folks that were frustrated, but you and your team did a fantastic job of maximizing our ability to be available and to continue to serve and to allow the public to use our facilities despite everything going on, and to do so safely. And I know our business, our hotels and restaurants, we're so grateful to have those folks coming in and utilizing them. And Lisa and her team worked with the Convention and Visitors Bureau and worked with the hotels and communicating with the different tournament directors to make sure we were saying, this is our expectation when you come into our community, whether you're at our facility, whether you're at the hotel, whether you're at a restaurant, we can work with you to get you food to the hotel in a conference room. Don't hang out in the lobbies, doing all of that different coordination to make sure that we could have a tournament safely. I think the businesses appreciated, those tournaments appreciated it, and that extra effort goes a really long way, because if we had one outbreak tied back to a tournament, especially early on, we would have had to make some drastic changes to everything else. And so that work and the hours you put in certainly does not go unrecognized, and our community at large appreciates that. So thank you. And I know you had some very awkward conversations with folks when we did have some issues with folks not following the guidelines. So thank you for having those conversations, because they are not fun.
Thank you.
Do we have other folks? I think I see Councilman Russell speaking, but we cannot hear him. You're not speaking? Okay. Wobser, go ahead.
First, if Matt's still there, Matt, I want to echo the comments from Councilman Greeno and Councilman Hellman on the great job you did this past year. Lisa, same to you. I think it's amazing what you were able to put together given the weird circumstances we were dealing with this year. And certainly appreciate the fact that we were open to bringing in other tournaments from around the state where they didn't have the opportunity to have an open ball field someplace. And that's great that we had that and we're open to be able to do that. The one thing I wanted to pass along, the pickleball courts at Riverside, I get nothing but great compliments about the fact that we put those together, and just wanted to tell you that they continue to get people thank me for putting them there, and they get a lot of use. If you end up over there at 9 o'clock in the morning, not right now, of course, but through the spring and summer and fall, they're getting a lot of use out there. I think we need to look at if we can do that again someplace else in the city. But thank you for all your work.
You know, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just said, thanks, Jeff. We appreciate it.
Well, Councilman Wobser, you know, fancy that you would bring that up. I think something that Parks and Recreation, and I'm sure Lisa and Matt and I are all advocates for, is we would love to see some strategic planning around parks and recreation in our community. So that's going to be something I'll be bringing up to council here again, so we can maybe look at getting a plan together around how we can even look at just putting the RFP out. I know we talked a little bit about that, putting the RFP out around strategic planning. Certainly taking advantage of, it doesn't hurt to ask and get a better idea of what that cost may look like if there's an opportunity in the next year or so to move forward on that. I think folks are certainly starting to recognize the value of recreation that we have in our community, but the importance of continuing to have other options for recreations, as people, you know, may need to be outside a little bit more as we still try to avoid indoor gathering. And I think that's hopefully a positive benefit that has come out of the coronavirus pandemic.
You know, Mayor, I had a conversation with Mr. Stasiak about putting money in for strategic planning and declined. So if we want to look at that, we may want to consider adding a few dollars into council's budget for that.
Yeah, well, certainly from council perspective, I would not be opposed to that. I think also if we want to get the RFP together and then put it out there and get a better sense of what the cost looks like, and then see where the finances come in, because I bet that's going to take us a couple months to go through that process, and then determine if we want to add some additional appropriations. I'd be comfortable with that, but certainly I think it would be money well spent. And I also believe that because I'm sure there's not a whole lot of business for those folks right now, there may be an opportunity to get better pricing.
Great point.
Other questions for Public Works or Recreation? All right, well, with that, Paul, I will kick it over to you real quick. Do you want to talk about the mill, or would you like to do that tomorrow?
No, I'll just take care of that right now while Dave and AJ are on the line as well, in case there's any detailed questions about current operations. Real quick summary of the last discussion, put a letter together and said I was exploring opportunities for the purchase of this mill, one being cash, one being contract for purchase agreement, all focused around picking up a piece of equipment that is still new, but is a 2019 model that'll save us, you know, somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 over the price of a new one. Discussions with the auditor's office make it pretty clear that the only real option we have to execute any kind of purchase this year is going to be cash. looking at the funds, we can certainly do that. I'm not opposed to doing that. We will save the interest anyway. So what I'm going to do is put legislation on the next meeting for our ability to go ahead and enter into a contract for purchase, put a not to exceed on that of $370,000. When we're all done with trade-in and warranty and all that stuff, I would expect it'll be somewhere between 320 and 340. But I know I won't go over that number, and I know we have the dollars to get that done. So I won't have anything for you to choose from in terms of purchase options. I'll just have legislation for you to either vote on or vote down for the purchase of that equipment. The reasons for the acquisition are still the same that we discussed at the last meeting. I don't have anything really to add to that. I think the guys sort of expanded on that a little bit during the meeting in terms of how much time, 6 to 1 or 5 to 1 in terms of the amount of time it takes to get something done with this mill relative to the zipper. But I just wanted to let you know that was the information that you were going to get. A little bit less than I had anticipated, but still working towards the same goal.
Paul, we don't have any issues with not bidding out that purchase.
It already has been bid out. It's bid out through a co-op. So we're basically getting a state bid equivalent price.
Okay, so we met that qualification then.
Correct. And rightfully so, Ginger alluded to the fact that we should include that in the ordinance. So you will be able to see the co-op agreement and the co-op that we're utilizing through the vendor to purchase the piece of equipment.
Very good. Thank you. And we'll need to pass that on suspended rules next week.
Yep. If you want to make sure that we can acquire that piece of equipment, I would do it as expeditiously as possible.
Perfect. I see Councilman Hellman that you unmuted. Did you have a question or comment?
I did. I've got a question regarding that, Paul. When you said that it was a cash only deal and we would save the interest, I mean, I understand that. Was there a preference to finance that? And if there is, are there other alternatives for financing it?
I could tell you that my preference is always to pay cash when we can, because there's no sense in paying someone interest. But I did
understand
that it was, if we had the ability, it's ultimately up to council how you want to go ahead and spend the dollars. My preference is the same, but your options could be different. In this particular case, I had the expectation that we would be able to present you with both a cash option and also a contract for purchase that would be a simple installment payment contract. We had some draft language from the vendor's lending institution that the language in that agreement isn't up to muster. So if we want to put an agreement like that together for future purchases, we should work on that in a separate conversation. But my understanding is that we will not be able to get that done in a timely enough fashion to be able to take advantage of this particular piece of equipment to purchase. So the only option, again, you know, we could hope that they don't sell it to anybody else, and we could spend our time working on another form of agreement if we really want to. Given that we don't have to, I'm putting forth the legislation and let you get an up and down vote on it on Tuesday. If it is voted down because council would rather work on some kind of installment process, then we can get busy on that, see how many months it takes, and then see if the equipment's still available.
Dennis,
Right.
Dennis, I'll add to that. Two things. I love the way how Paul very succinctly gives his opinion in his comments. It's good. I agree with you, Paul, by the way. But Dennis, the amount of the financing that when Auditor Stasiak took a look at it would be about $27,500 in interest, and doesn't sound like a whole lot when we're looking at approximately little over $300,000 in a purchase. But if you think about that, that's a lot of part-time people we could hire in the summer to mow lawns and things that we didn't get done this summer. So it's a significant amount that we would save by paying cash.
Appreciate the comments. Thanks.
Thank you for considering. Any other questions on that?
All right. Any other items or questions that folks thought of on the other departments? We're wrapping it up. So any other questions for today's meeting? All right. Again, I just want to thank everyone for participating. I know we had a number of folks that weren't necessarily visible, but that were on the lines and participating, and certainly appreciate that. As a reminder for the council members, this was streamed online, so feel free to share access to that. But with that, we will go ahead and close this evening's meeting. I will see you all tomorrow, same time, same place, 5:30, and appreciate it. Have a wonderful, safe, warm evening. Thank you.